everybody, welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
And we're the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right, we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's
right. What a day.
What a dollar.
You make $1?
So I said that this morning I walked, this is going to get cut out. This morning I walked into the office and I said, another day, another dollar to someone that was sitting down. And they said, you make $1 in the exact same cadence you just said it in.
Oh yeah, that's what I always say when somebody says they make money. Why do you have to cut that out?
It gets rid of the kayfabe of us being like living in a box in the office that we live in.
I really hope that nobody actually believes that we live in a box in an abandoned building.
You don't know. There might be people who are buying into the role play that we have established of us operating out of an abandoned building where we shove the bodies of our previous guests into a room and lock the door. People might think Josh actually lives in a glove box.
The premium edition light is in fact true though.
It is. That is true.
We do have a giant neon sign that says Premium Edition Games. Well, anyway, Zach, what have you recently been playing?
Seth, recently I've been playing Arcade Paradise, which was a game released in 2022 by Nosebleed Interactive and published by Wired Productions. And I think it's a game that you've talked about before, and it's also a game that we played the demo of back at PAX East, I believe in 2022, in fact, so 2 years ago. Arcade Paradise is a fun game. In the game, you play as a girl named Ashley, and you manage a laundromat that has been essentially just left to die by her father, who owns a bunch of property. And in the back of the laundromat is an arcade. It starts out as a small arcade, but you can expand the business as you make money. And in the game, you learn that arcades, in fact, draw a lot of cash. So you can use the money from the arcade to make your arcade an empire. Now, the game is a simulation game, so you have to manage your time by doing laundry, cleaning toilets, picking up trash, scraping gum. But a lot of the things that you do have little mini game elements to them. So like when you throw the trash in the dumpster, it gives you like a target and you have to land it in the target. And if you land it in the target in the right place, you get more points. So it does add some fun elements to doing mundane chores. One thing that's fun is that the arcade is functional. All of the different games in the arcade are playable. So you can in fact play games in the arcade that you manage. However, it's important to note that a lot of things are on a timer. So like wash has to be done at a certain time and clothes have to be dried at a certain time. So you can't spend all of your time playing in the arcade unless you don't care about other people's clothes. But doing laundry will give you money. So that's always good to make sure that you do your work. It's a fun game. I like it. I like the simulation element to it. It's also kind of relaxing to just kind of, I don't know, mindlessly do chores in a video game, which sounds weird, but I enjoy it. I think it's a overall enjoyable time. And what have you been recently playing, Seth?
Yeah, so recently I wanted to bring it back to the old buy, wait, pass. And I went and picked a game that I was going to buy, wait, or pass on. Well, so there was a bunch of demos that came out on Steam, and one was called the Vigilante Diaries. It's being developed by Out of the Blue Games. They were the developers who did America Arcadia. Out of Blue Games is working on a game called the Vigilante Diaries, which is a narrative-driven role-playing game where you assume the role of a masked vigilante. Like, when you think about that, you think that you're like exploring a city and beating up people. No. Diaries is the word that's really working in the game's name. You read through his diaries as him, thinking about his life and the choices he's made, and you get to make different choices as you go through. And sometimes there's like a first person mode where he like you like look around his home. I don't know if there's any like exploration or places where you will be able to act in first person, being that it's the same developers who did American Arcadia, who really liked that split like different types of game modes. There'll probably be a first person section that you can use because that's what they did in American Arcadia. They had like a third person go to the left adventure game and then a first-person action puzzle game type deal, where I'm assuming Vigilante Diaries is going to have that kind of dichotomy play. I don't know. I don't know because I've only played a little bit of the demo. But you hang out in his hideout, and you get to make these decisions, and the decisions you make will build up to who you are as a person, which is great. It reminds me a bit of Life and Suffering of Sir Brant. That game you go through, and you have to make choices, and that kind of builds up to of the type of world that you live in. Except instead of this being set in like the medieval ages, it starts out in the 80s, and you play through the 80s and 90s, give or take. And it's cool because you get to name your character, you get to name who your vigilante is, and you get to decide like what's your code. Like in the beginning, like you have to be like, what's my code of ethics? Like, do I kill people? Do I not kill people? Like Batman, do I kill only bad guys, or do I just kill everybody? So like that choice, if you pick that you like to kill everybody, you'll gain aggression. And then when you encounter some of your first enemies, one of the options is just to blap them from the beginning or like pull your gun on them. But if you don't have that like kill mentality, then you can't do it. You don't have enough aggression in that time. So like it definitely is a cool way to like build on your experiences while building up your kind of like your own vigilante. I really like that, the whole vigilante motif. I think I actually like vigilante stuff more than superheroes, but they're similar in vein, except vigilantes generally don't have powers and generally also don't really follow the law. But yeah, so that's kind of like where that game is. I'm pretty excited about it coming out. It's supposed to be coming out soon, so I may talk about it again, but I actually didn't want to play the demo too much because I wanted to save some of the game for when it comes out, and so I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
That's fun. I think a fun difference between a vigilante and a superhero is that a superhero like Superman often fights supervillains like Doomsday or Darkseid. Vigilantes like Batman often just fight mentally ill clowns.
Or Calendar Man. Batman's greatest villain, Calendar Man. He's got a way to kill somebody a different way every holiday.
He's also really good at dates.
Yeah, he always knows what day it is.
I think it's just always telling that when Superman fights someone, like, I don't know, he sends them to like the negative zone or something, but when Batman fights someone, he sends them to the hospital.
But he always sends them to the hospital. Batman doesn't kill a lot of people.
But I mean, he like commits them to like Arkham.
Oh, yeah. That hospital.
He doesn't like send people to jail. He like just commits them to a mental hospital.
No, he also sends them to a physical, like a
Yes. Sometimes he sends to a boo-boo hospital.
Yes, so Superman banishes them to the
to like the negative zone or whatever. I don't know, the big triangle.
Superman also has a giant city in a tiny little bottle in his house.
That's true. Superman's a weird man. Anyway, today we are talking about something a bit different. We are talking about a current topic because, Seth, I don't know if you know this, but the Olympics are happening.
They are?
They are. In fact, the Olympics are happening right now, and the Olympics will be happening until the 11th. That's my understanding. But it is an exciting time. You get to see some of the world's best athletes compete against each other in some really exciting games like fencing or discus. Do they still do discus? I don't know.
No idea.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't actually watch the Olympics. Do you?
No.
That doesn't stop us from talking about them, because today we're talking about Olympic video games based on the Olympics. Now, because we're the Classic Gaming Brothers and we are pedantic, we have to tell you about the history of the Olympics. The Olympic Games, as we know them, were created by the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC, back in 1894, with the first modern game being held in Athens, Greece. They were inspired by the original Olympic Games held in Olympia, Greece from the 8th century BC to the 4th century AD. In ancient times, the games were competed between various city-states and consisted of things like wrestling, boxing, discus, horse racing, and long-distance running. When the modern games were started, the games would be played between different countries, and they're hosted every 4 years with an alternation between summer and winter games every 2 years. So both the summer and the winter games are played every 4 years, but between those, it's either summer or winter, if that makes sense. The Olympics are often, though, seen as a time where countries can put aside their differences and unite under the banner of sports, which is a nice thing to say in theory, but not a thing that is usually held in practice. But enough of that. We're going to talk about video games. Sports video games are a huge genre, and there's an equally sized subgenre of Olympic-themed sports games. What's fascinating is that because the Olympics are technically under the copyright of the IOC, there are both unlicensed and licensed Olympic-themed video games. So let's break down these games. We're going to be talking about a handful of them, and we're going to to start off by talking about some of the licensed Olympic Games, and then we'll talk about some of the unauthorized Olympic Games. So Seth, why don't you take it away with our first one?
One of the earliest games that was officially sponsored by the IOC was Track and Field, not to be confused with the retail store Field and Streams. Released in 1983 by Konami for a ton of systems, Track and Field was also called Hyper Olympic in Europe and Japan. In Japan, the game would sport the official license for the 1984 Summer Olympics. Outside of Japan, the game did not sport such a license, likely explaining the different name, not Hyper Olympic, and just called Track and Field, which could take place in a high school. The original release of the arcade cabinet featured 2 run buttons that would be quickly pressed for a majority of the game. Later versions would replace the buttons with a trackball because the buttons would be prone to failure because people were pounding them over and over again. There are 6 events: 100-meter dash, a long jump, a javelin throw, a 110-meter hurdle, a hammer throw, and a high jump. A majority of the games required pressing the buttons quickly or timing the button presses. The arcade version could be played up to 4 players, with players competing in pairs. If you have less than 4 players, the computer takes over. Some players also learn to cheat with ping pong balls or coins to hit the button faster, also causing additional wear, which would cause damage and require the later units to get rid of the button controls. The arcade version sold well, with 38,000 units selling in Japan and becoming the 3rd highest grossing arcade game in the US. In 1984, Konami would hold a track and field competition, which brought over 1 million players from Japan and North America to compete in a game that didn't require actually running on a track. It has the world record for being one of the largest gaming competition events of all time, with competitions held between April 30th to May 26th in various arcades across the world.
That was 1 million people or so playing in this competition altogether, so not all in one place. That would be a crazy event.
That would be intense.
That would be intense. Could you imagine 1 million people in one, conference center?
It'd be like The Wizard.
It would be like The Wizard. Now, the next game we're talking about is Hyper Olympic 84, which was also developed by Konami and is considered a sequel to Track and Field. The Japanese release would be licensed again by the IOC, and it would also go under the name Hypersports. The game was released in the arcade and ported to the Amstrad CPC, BBC Micro, Commodore 64, MSX, ZX Spectrum, and SG-1000. Activities in the game included swimming, skeet shooting, long horse, archery, triple jump, weightlifting, pole vault, etc. Most of the activities are played by either alternating button presses or pressing a button at the right time. Again, similar to Track and Field, and I'm going to spoil something for you. Pretty much all these games are played that way, with some exceptions.
I'm pretty sure we do not cover the one Olympic game that I did own, and that was the 2008 Beijing Olympics game, which I do believe has been delisted from Steam.
Yes, it has.
I still own it. It's still on my Steam account because you can't take away what I own. And that game also kind of similar to the button clickings. So, doesn't really truly deviate. But to be fair, Zach, aren't all games just button clicking?
Yes, true. But there's it's a specific type of clicking that you get with these games where you often have to spam a button over and over and over and over again to get your character to catch up to speed or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very particular style. I guess they're trying to make you feel like you're working out. Hyper Olympic 84 did well. It was actually listed as one of the 6th most successful arcade cabinets of August 1984 in the magazine Game Machine.
I really do like that caveat and how we drill it down. So it starts off with being one of the 6th most successful arcade cabinets, which everyone's like, wow, I didn't really hear about that.
In this obscure gaming publication.
Not only the obscure gaming publication, it's the 6th most successful arcade cabinet in August of 1984. By this game magazine, which I'm sure, and Game Machine's not an obscure gaming publication. Game Machine was a pretty legit gaming publication. But, to be the 6th most successful arcade cabinet of August 1984 had to be pretty big, right? How many arcade cabinets were you competing with in August of 1984? And was it were you the 6th most successful arcade cabinet of August 1984 that came out that month? In that case, did 10 come out that month? If you're 6 of 6, you're not great. if you're 6 of 100, that's great. But did 100 arcade cabinets really come out in August?
Right.
I'm just saying.
This was a monthly magazine.
Right. And their sales might have achieved to be the 6th highest during that month.
And they published a monthly list. So,
right.
Yes.
It's at least a top 10 for 1 month.
Yes.
And top 5, it looks like, in the September issue.
Yeah, it was in the top 5 in the September issue. And in the U.S., it remained at the top of the publication Play Meters charts for multiple months. So for most of the year. Good. Yeah. And the ports also were well received. The publication ZZap64 called it a quote-unquote first-rate conversion and gave it a 90%. And the publication Your Sinclair rated it as number 59 on their top 100 games of all time. So I think that's beyond just ZX Spectrum games. So, number 59 out of 100. It's not passing, but it's there.
Decidedly placed. Coinciding with the 1992 Barcelona games, the Olympic Gold would be developed by Tiertex Design Studios and published by US Gold, and sponsored by Coca-Cola, only in Europe. The game was released for the Game Gear, Genesis, and Sega Master System. In Olympic Gold, you play as a fictional athlete, either from the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, the US, Japan, or the United Team, which was a team that represented the former Soviet Union at the 1992 games. Each team is given its own theme, and each fictional athlete has different stats. The game consists of 7 events. Those events are the 100-meter sprint, the hammer throw, archery, 110-meter hurdle, pole vault, 3-meter springboard diving, and the 200-meter freestyle swimming. The game has 3 modes: practice, the Mini Olympics, and the Full Olympics. Mini Olympics allowed some events to be turned off, and the Full Olympics featured all of the events. There are also 3 difficulty levels: club, national, and Olympic. And at higher difficulties, computer-controlled players would actually beat world records. The primary gameplay mechanic is mashing buttons quickly or timing your button presses. World records being that the computer was better than the world record set
by real athletes.
By real athletes.
Yes.
Not that the computer was generating world records in performance.
No. But like, let's say, I don't know, something was 4 minutes on some activity. The computer could do it in like 3.
On a higher difficulty.
On higher difficulty, yes.
So then if you beat the computer, you were the world record holder.
And you're better than a real athlete.
That's right.
And the IOC owes you a gold medal.
So write to them.
Our next game is kind of an oddity because it's not a sports game. In fact, it's, I think, the only game on this list that's not a sports game. And that game is Izzy's Quest for the Olympic Rings. It's a platformer developed by Alexandria and published by US Gold for the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, and it stars Izzy. Izzy being the mascot for the Atlanta 1996 Summer Games. Izzy is, as best as I can tell from the photo of him I found, a blue teardrop-shaped alien with Olympic rings stuck on his tail. The story behind Izzy the character is that the Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games did a search for a mascot back in 1991. They received 10 submissions, with some being phoenixes, there was a peanut, they had a gorilla, and of course, someone submitted a tear-shaped blob that was named What's It?
If they searched for a mascot in 2024, they would receive millions of submissions, and I guarantee you, most of those would be inappropriate.
What's It was designed by John Ryan, who worked for an Atlanta animation firm, Design FX. What's It would be chosen as the official mascot, though they would slightly redesign him based on some notes that they had, and they would rename him Izzy.
Ah, nice. They would make it so that they didn't have to give John Ryan anything.
Yeah, they took away John Ryan's rights and made it their own. After Izzy would be chosen, the Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games, ACOG, would also commission an animated movie called Izzy's Quest for Olympic Gold, produced by Film Roman. Izzy's Quest for the Olympic Gold would air on TNT and promptly never be aired again, making it lost media until it was posted to YouTube in 2020 thanks to someone's VHS home recording.
Izzy, Torch World citizens do not compete in the Olympic Games. Our job is to tend the Olympic flame, keeping the spirit of the game shining and bright. No citizen of the Torch World has ever competed in the Olympic Games, and they never will. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now get yourself downstairs for lunch.
Izzy goes in for the final shot!
I said no!
Whoa!
Now, another tie-in did not receive the fate of becoming nearly lost media, and that tie-in would be Izzy's Quest for the Olympic Rings, a video game which would put you in the role of Izzy. And it's a pretty standard platformer. You travel various levels, some of them themed on ancient Greece, and others being space or lava themed. None of them are themed after Atlanta, the town that the Olympics were set in. Or the Olympics. And while you're traveling, you collect various medals. So I guess that's Olympic themed. Bronze, silver, and gold. You literally collect them, though. They're floating in the air, and you pick them up like they're Mario
You're
coins.
like, there, I left. Maybe it's like Mario's Missing, except it's with Izzy.
And your goal overall is to collect the missing rings of the Olympic logo. When you beat the game, you light the torch at the Atlanta Games.
Oh, so this is like a pre-Olympic game. They can't have the Olympics because they're missing the medals and they're missing their rings.
Yes.
So you need to find these items and then return them so that they could give medals out to people and have rings. And then they say, because of your great service, finding our missing crap, you can light the torch.
Yes.
You raindrop.
The raindrop, yes. Now, Izzy's Quest for the Olympic Rings, not a great game. In fact, I went through a review of it by a YouTuber, Seth and I like SNES Drunk, and he said how he loves playing obscure licensed games like Cool Spot and such, and he had high expectations going into Izzy and the Quest for the Olympic Rings, and he was disappointed. So it is not an amazing game, but it is out there. You can play it. Izzy as a whole, as a character, was apparently unpopular in Atlanta and during the Olympics, largely because people thought he looked like a sperm wearing shoes.
Which maybe he was.
Maybe.
The world may never know. If you want to put yourself in 2008 Zach's shoes, you see a commercial for an upcoming game for Sega. That trailer is an obvious tie into the Olympics with a shot of the 2008 Beijing Stadium. Wait, did you think we were not going to talk about 2008 Beijing Olympics? Well, guess what? During this trailer, you then see Mario and Sonic together. So this is the first ever game that Sonic and Mario will be in a game together. It's Olympic themed and has nothing to do with the 2008 Beijing Olympic game, where you play, from my recollection, a lot of QuickTime events while you maneuver weird ragdoll children.
Yeah, in this you do QuickTime events while you maneuver Sonic or Mario characters.
Now, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games would be the first official game to feature Mario and Sonic crossing over. In the game, you play as either characters from the Sonic universe or characters from the Mario universe as you go against each other in a variety of Olympic games. This includes gymnastics, shooting, archery, rowing, aquatics, fencing, the 100-meter dash, and table tennis. Which is probably this game, I think isn't there a table tennis specific, or at least Mario Tennis, I guess. But
yeah, there's Mario Tennis.
There are also dream events, which use locations and objects from Mario and Sonic games. There were two versions of the game, one for the DS and one for the Wii. The DS version features some games not on the Wii version, specifically 5 dream events, which consist of canoeing, boxing, basketball, long jump, and skeet shooting. Reportedly, development on a crossover went back as far as 2005 with Shigeru Miyamoto and the Sonic team Yuji Naka meeting in private to discuss a crossover between Mario and Sonic. The idea came about to put them in the Olympics when Sega was awarded the license to produce the 2008 Beijing Olympics game. Nintendo and Sega would announce the game at a joint press conference in 2007 and premiere the game at E3 in 2007. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games did really, really well, selling 7.09 million copies on the Wii and 4.22 million on the DS. It ranked, however, mostly mediocre scores, like, to be honest, most Olympic games. Getting a C+ from 1UP.com, a 3.5 out of 5 from GamePro, 6 out of 10 from GameSpot, and a 3 out of 5 stars from XPlay. A C+ rating for a C+ game.
Getting into some of the unofficial games, these are games that were not officially licensed by the IOC. Starting off, we have a game called Microsoft Decathlon, or also called Olympic Decathlon. It is one of the earliest games to be based on the Olympics in any form, but again, not officially sponsored by the IOC. Despite this, though, the game does feature real players such as Caitlyn Jenner, who participated in the 1976 Montreal Summer Games. This game was released in 1980 and was developed by Timothy W. Smith and published by Microsoft Consumer Products for the TRS-80, where it was sold as Olympic Decathlon. It was also released for the Apple II, and then IBM picked it up and ported it to the PC under the name Microsoft Decathlon. It's a fairly simple game, with graphics primarily being like blocks and lines, but despite the limitations, you can compete in a 100-meter run, long jump, shot put, high jump, 400-meter run, 100-meter hurdles, pole vault, javelin, and 1,500-meter run. When you do the running events, you typically have to alternate pressing the numeric keys 1 and 2. Other events require other keys, while the screen will tell you what to press. So I was watching gameplay, and it'll be like, press space now. When it was released, Olympic Decathlon was called, quote-unquote, a great party game by Byte Magazine, and they praised the dedication to the rules of the games that you were playing. PC Magazine called the game quote-unquote realistic and said the quote-unquote jumping and throwing events are particularly authentic, because even if a game doesn't look great, you can still nail down those physics, and this is something that Microsoft Decathlon does have going for it, is that the physics are pretty good.
Now, a relatively infamous game for the fact that one version of the game is very expensive, Stadium Events was developed by Human Entertainment and published by Bandai for the Nintendo Entertainment System. The game was designed to be played with the Family Fun Fitness Mat, also known as the Power Pad. The game was released in Japan in 1986 and in North America in 1987. Now, the Power Pad looks like one of those mats that you put down while you are training your dog not to pee on the rug, known as a pee-pee pad. It's made of a rubbery plastic. One side features 8 circles, 6 blue ones in a diamond shape, and 2 red ones in the center of the shape. The second side of the pad features 12 circles, 6 blue on one side and 6 red on the other side. And the pad basically works as a controller, also as a pee-pee pad, with hitting the circles corresponding to different buttons on the joypad. The idea being you can use the power pad to essentially get a workout in while you play the game. And Nintendo will not give up on this concept, bringing in, when the Wii came out, bringing out the Wii balance board for the Wii Fit. So like Nintendo loves trying to get people to do something while playing their games. When the Stadium Events was first released, the pad was still referred to as the Family Fun Fitness Mat and was a product of Bandai. However, Nintendo would acquire the rights to the game and the pad, renaming the game to World Class Track Meet and rebranding the mat as the Power Pad. There was, however, a brief period of time where Stadium Events was available and on the market before rebranding. Now, the total amount sold is unknown, with one number being tossed at around close to 10,000 units, which was the minimum run of a standard NES game at the time. Due to this, a loose copy of Stadium Events is currently valued at over $16,000. A complete in-box game is valued at $42,000, and a brand new sealed version of the game can fetch you close to $170,000. Go look for Stadium Events on your next find. However, I don't think you'll be able to pick it up cheap at any convention, but you may be able to find it, I don't know, like a warehouse or an old Kmart or something. Alternatively, World Class Track Meet will fetch you $5 loose, $27 complete, and about $110 sealed. So when they rebranded it, they lost all the cred because Stadium Events is where it's at. So don't pay $170,000 for World Class Track Meet, but try to pay like $100 for Stadium and you're good to go. $100,000.
That being said, if you just want to play the game, World Class Track Meet is identical to Stadium Events.
Yeah, so you can buy that or find the ROM. Besides the history behind it, the game is your standard Olympic-themed sports game. The primary appeal is that it's a fitness game, with the pad being marked as being required. There are 4 events, a 100-meter dash, 110-meter hurdle, long jump, and a triple jump, and it's important to stand absolutely still when beginning the game, because if you even just lift your feet slightly, it can trigger a false start warning. If you trigger 3 false starts, you will be disqualified.
Now, the last game that we're going to talk about is one of the more odd ones. I don't think it's as odd as Izzy, but it is certainly odd in the sense that it is about a fictional Olympics, because it is in fact Alien Olympics 2044 AD. It was developed by Dark Technologies and published by Ocean in 1994, and Alien Olympics 2044 AD was a game released on the Game Boy and MS-DOS and features aliens performing in an Olympic-style event. You control up to 8 different alien species, with each having different stats. So, for example, there's like a caterpillar-style alien who's not very good at running, but they are very good at shooting. So maybe you want to play as them when you're doing the shooty games. Now, because you are on an alien planet, there are some differences. For example, gravity is lighter, and you are able to jump and move differently than you would if you were on Earth. Now, some of the events that you might look forward to playing are laser leaping, big bounce, laser skeet 2, 100 cubit sprint, 200 cubit splurge, lunge leap splat, toxophilia, which I looked up. Toxophilia is the term for people who love archery. So toxophilia is just archery. Flop flop, saber sling, survival, alien hurl, jetpack tag, lizard leap, and wall jumping. Now, on DOS, the game features incredibly colorful graphics, has nice large sprites, everything looks really clean and pretty. On the Game Boy, though, it's all in black and white. It still looks nice, but it's definitely looks nicer on DOS. Like the other games we've talked about, most of the gameplay is done through button mashing or button timing. So, for example, when you're doing your big bounce, you have to time things correctly. When you're doing your laser skeet, you have to line up the reticle correctly and shoot at the right time. Though there are some other gameplay elements in the game, such as a maze game where you pilot a UFO, which, that's unique.
Yeah, it's also fun.
What's fun?
The game Alien Olympics 2044 AD was done in 1994, and we are now, and we have been for a little while, farther away from 94 than we are from 2044.
That's true.
1994 was 30 years away. 2044 is only 20.
Yeah.
And so hopefully there's some aliens doing some splurging and splooing, I guess, or whatever.
I really hope they're flop-flopping out there.
Flop-flopping. And most of these games sound sexual in nature.
They really do. Well, with that's going to be our Olympic episode. Seth, how would you rank us? Gold medal? Are we getting silver? Are we getting bronze?
I think we get that one space that's right after bronze.
Ah, okay. The fourth place.
We qualify as the first non-medalists.
We are that meme where it's the guy getting all the awards and then spraying himself with champagne, but he's at the very bottom.
I feel like our podcast is that meme.
It truly is. Getting into today's Retro Rewind, though, Seth had me play Oregon Trail 2 for Windows 3.1. Developed by Mech and published by Softkey Multimedia, Oregon Trail 2 is an updated version of the Oregon Trail and features more detailed graphics. Primarily, most of the graphics are photos, a lot of times still photos of people in costume, like period-accurate costume or semi-period accurate costume, posing around wagons. Though, you also get some pre-rendered assets, like some of the buildings you see are these pre-rendered buildings, and sometimes people will be standing out in front of them, and you click on them, and their picture is there, and their mouth moves, and it's kind of creepy. I played this game a lot as a kid, so I love playing this game whenever I get the chance. It was a game that was already installed on the computers in the computer lab at school, and our teacher didn't want us going on Flash game websites, so we were required to play a game that was quote-unquote educational, and that was Oregon Trail 2. Little did they know we were having a blast and we weren't learning a thing, except how to play the game, which is you play as a banker with a ton of money and you buy enough supplies so that you don't die, but then you do die because what happens is you'll survive dysentery somehow, but you'll get mauled by a bear.
You didn't have enough money.
I'm not making it up when I say one time I had a guy who forded a river. We nearly drowned, and then when we crossed over the river, I got bit by a snake and died.
But did you have another member of your family to carry on?
No, I think everyone else died in the river.
Should have had more money.
Oregon Trail 2 is fun. I like it a lot. It's a really fun game with some great music, and maybe I'll even play a little bit music here. I know normally we don't do that for the Retro Rewind, but I think this is an exception. But does it hold up? Absolutely. Of course it holds up. Next week, Seth, you can play Maya Quest, The Mystery Trail for Windows 3.1.
Great. Zach had me play Star Trek Deep Space Nine Harbinger, which was developed by Stormfront Studios and released in 1996. In the game, you play as Envoy Bannock, who's on a special assignment to a newly discovered race in the Gamma Quadrant. And on his return trip through the wormhole that pops out by Deep Space Nine, the Envoy is attacked by some sort of alien drones and crashes into the docking ring of Deep Space Nine. And you have to, you play as Envoy Bannock, and you get to interact with the Deep Space Nine crew. The game starts off with you being in the ship, and the ship needing to be plasma vented, and Odo appears as his puddle form, and then forms up, and then tells you, he says, "Hello, Envoy, you need to help me fix your ship." So you help him fix your ship, and then you get brought onto the Deep Space Nine, and you're just kind of taller than everybody, which is really weird. I don't know why, but like Cisco is like a foot shorter than you. And then they put you to work. They talk to you, and then they're like, "Hey, can you do all these things for us? Can you like help us watch this, some like evidence? We're going to talk to some people on the view screen, and then you need to get on the guns and start shooting drones." You're an envoy, like a diplomatic ambassador, and you're immediately conscripted into their service. And before they put you on the guns, Cisco tells you to go talk to one of the guys who may have attacked your ship. He's like, "Why don't you go to his quarters and talk to him?" And you're like, "The hell, dude? Like, I'm literally an envoy. I just want to get off this space station." Anyway, it's a fun little puzzly adventure game. My issue, though, was that one of the early things that you need to do is shoot drones, and they put you in a like spinny kind of screen where you're like flying all over space, and you have to shoot these tiny little drones with 2 phaser blasts that never hit, and if the drones hit you enough, Deep Space Nine explodes, which I don't think really helps with the game, but that's all right. I had fun playing it. Maybe I'll play it again. I don't necessarily recommend it for people who really don't like weird, obscure adventure puzzle games, but if you do, maybe check it out. Next week, Zach, you can play the master levels for Doom 2 for MS-DOS.
I will. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for today's episode, and thank you for listening. If anyone has any memories of any particular Olympic game that they played growing up, or games like Beijing 2008 that you have fond memories of, like Seth does, send us an email to classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. We're also available on Facebook, Classic Gaming Brothers, Instagram, Classic Gaming Brothers, X, CG Brothers Pod, or Blue Sky, CG Brothers Pod. You can also find us on Threads at Classic Gaming Brothers. We're available wherever podcasts can be found, such as YouTube, iHeartRadio, or Spotify, or Podbean. And you can also, of course, visit our website, classicgamingbrothers.com, where you can check out our merch and buy a t-shirt or maybe a mug. Anyway, Seth, am I forgetting anything?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's
right.
That's right.